Cohoes is a small city in Albany County in New York State. It is bordered by the Mohawk River and is located at the junction of the Mohawk and Hudson Rivers. Once, Cohoes was an active canal town. This tracking shot shows Mohawk Street in Cohoes today. However, if you could take a time tunnel to the early 19th century, this picture would have you sailing on the Erie Canal. The Erie Canal, which passed through Cohoes at that time, has been abandoned. But it was this canal that changed the history of New York City and state, including Cohoes, and even the history of the entire United States. Many historical remains of the Erie Canal in Cohoes are certainly worth a visit. From the first days of the expansion of the British colonies in North America, a big problem was that of transportation between the Atlantic Ocean coast and the interior. Horse-drawn wagons were the most common means of transportation for both people and goods. But travelers were faced with rutted turnpike roads that baked to hardness in the summer sun. In the winter, the roads dissolved into a sea of mud. In those times, there were neither railways nor cars, and water transportation was the most cost-effective way to ship goods. Soon, people envisioned a navigable water route from New York City and the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes. After 8 years of construction, the Erie Canal opened in 1825 and provided the first navigable water route from New York City and the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes. The Erie Canal extended from Buffalo on Lake Erie, one of the Great Lakes, to Albany. From Albany, boats could then travel down the Hudson River to reach New York City. Canal barges were towed by mules or horses along towpaths. Whit Clinton of New York was the foremost advocate for construction of the Erie Canal. It was nicknamed Clinton's Ditch. The Erie Canal soon became a great commercial success. The Erie Canal reduced shipping time from New York City to Buffalo from 3 weeks to just 8 days. The cost per ton of transporting cargo from New York City to Buffalo also dropped from $100 to less than $10. In the first 9 years, the canal tolls more than recovered the entire cost of construction. Between 1835 and the beginning of the 20th century, the canal was enlarged twice to accommodate heavier traffic. The canal created during the first enlargement is known as the Enlarged Canal or the Old Erie Canal. Erie Canal boats became bigger and bigger. In 1825, the canal could only handle boats carrying 30 tons. By 1862, the canal could handle boats carrying 240 tons. The enlarged Erie Canal was 350 miles long, 70 feet wide, and 7 feet deep. It was the largest hydraulic project of the 19th century and the second longest canal in the world, after the Grand Canal in China. The project was huge and the work arduous. People building the canal had to chop down trees to clear a path through virgin forest and move excavated soil. They had to build aqueducts to carry barges across rivers, large streams, and deep valleys. The builders had to build numerous bridges spanning the canal. They also had to build dozens of locks to overcome the 570-foot difference between the level of the Hudson River and that of Lake Erie. The enlarged Erie Canal had 72 lift locks, and 10 of these were in Cohoes. These locks were situated within a span of fewer than 2 miles. The earliest versions of the canal, especially Clinton's Ditch, were dug almost entirely by hand. All labor depended upon human and animal power or on the power of water. A canal digger described his work in this way: "We are digging the ditch through the mire, through the mud and slime and the mire by heck. And the mud is our principal hire, up our pants and our shirts down our neck, by heck. We are digging the ditch through the gravel so the people and freight can travel." The builders developed ingenious ways to solve these problems. To move earth, animals pulled a slip scraper. Perhaps it was the forefather of the bulldozer. A unique device was invented to speed up construction. It was called the stump puller, and it pulled giant tree stumps out of the ground almost effortlessly. The canal's peak year was 1855, when 33,000 commercial shipments took place. At one time, more than 50,000 people depended on the Erie Canal for their livelihood. The Erie Canal became a striking example of a gigantic undertaking, bravely and boldly begun and successfully accomplished. The Erie Canal changed the course of history for New York City and state and for the entire USA. The biggest engineering project of its century unlocked the western interior of the USA for trade and settlement. New York City, with its deep harbor connecting to the Hudson River, grew to be the nation's most powerful center of international trade. Boom towns sprang up along the canal path. Even now, 80% of upstate New York's population lives within 25 miles of the Erie Canal. Cohoes benefited greatly from the Erie Canal. The canal brought many workers, travelers, and boatmen to the Cohoes area and led to the building of new homes, shops, and stables. The ease of shipping and the excellent water power at Cohoes was a primary reason for the development of many large knitting mills. The Harmony Mills became the largest and most technologically advanced cotton factory in the United States by the 1870s. The city began to form. Cohoes was incorporated in 1870. Today, a sign of Clinton's Ditch still stands by Mohawk Street, the former ditch. Few remains of the original Clinton's Ditch exist in Cohoes. The only visible site is the former power canal on North Mohawk Street, now a park. You can still see the former intakes, but the building above them, a big textile mill, was replaced by a lawn. Many remains of the enlarged Erie Canal still exist. Notable among them are 10 double locks, numbers 9 through 18, all in Cohoes. This is the greatest concentration of locks along the Erie Canal. Although much of the canal has been filled in, some sections of the canal bed, towpath, and prisms remain, and several of limestone constructed locks are in very good condition. Visitors can reach them by foot. This photo shows Lock 18's entry from 1842 to 1915. Harmony Mill number 3 is in the center background. It has been listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The view shows the head of Lock 18, which was a fine example of the canal's double-chambered locks. Standing on the head of the lock, you can look over the Mohawk River's Cohoes Falls. A view of the lower end entrance to the lock shows the two chambers. The east chamber is in reasonably good condition. The original gate sill is visible, although partly removed. The lock was built by human muscle with large limestone bricks. A close-up view of the limestone shows remnants of blast holes. The west chamber is partially filled in and full of shrubs. These videos show the west wall of the center island across the chamber from the towpath side. The camera is aimed at a recess on the wall. The recess was used to mount the hinge of the lock's gate. A look at the head of the central island shows 3 square holes. They are at the entrance of the spillway, which control the water level above the lock. You can climb up and look into the entrance to probe the spillway tunnel inside the lockhead. The tunnel is still visible, even though most of it is filled by soil. There is a spillway outlet at the bottom of the center island's end, but its dome hole is almost completely buried and hidden behind weeds. This is a picture of the end of Lock 17. The picture of the west chamber's inside was taken from the top of the west chamber's west wall. A visitor walks inside. He gives us an idea of the size of the lock. The west chamber is in fairly good condition. A number of trees has grown up around the lock. The west wall of the east chamber remains in existence, but much of the stonework on the east wall has been removed. A former lock tender's house, now a private residence, is located on the west side of Lock 17. A chat with the present owner of the house provided information that his house was more than 175 years old.
It's over 100 years.
175.
Lock 16 is almost completely filled in. Facing north provides a view of the Cohoes Heritage Trail. Here is what was formerly the center island. The top of the east wall of the west chamber is visible on the left. The west wall was buried under the road. The top of the west wall of the east chamber became the curves of the trail. The top of the east wall of the east chamber is slightly visible through the shrubs. The shrubs were pushed aside to provide a way into the east chamber. If a barge went through the lock, it would probably be at this level. A new discovery awaited on the west wall of the center island. A groove in the top of stone where the hinge pin holder for the gate was bolted in. Some remains of this hardware are visible. This picture was taken from within the bed of the upper pond before the head of Lock 15. A close-up view of the spillway entrance shows that the limestones are badly eroded and broken. A poured concrete dam had been placed across the head of the lock sometime after reconstruction. To approach the lower entrance of the lock, you must wade through waist-deep weeds. Lock walls are in good condition. A visitor measures the size of stones with his arms. The stones were cut by hand. An arched spillway outlet at the bottom of the end of the center island is visible. The towpath, once used to pull barges down the canal, is now reused as a trail for hiking or biking. The canal bed downstream of Lock 15 is faintly discernible, even though it is overgrown with shrubs and weeds. With Google Earth, you can view Lock 15 clearly. The lower end of Lock 14 is still visible, but the 2 chambers are completely filled in and overgrown with tall trees. The top of the west wall of the west chamber is exposed. It has become a part of a private yard now. Cars are parked on top of the limestone. Lock 13 has been buried under Bedford Street. It is no longer visible. You can see Lock 13's features only in this historical picture. Most of Lock 12 is now located underneath this City of Cohoes firehouse. Only a short section of a wall remains on the hillside. The lower entrance of the west chamber of Lock 11 is hidden in the bushes. It has been mostly buried, and the walls are exposed only to the extent of 1 yard. The east wall of the center island has become the wall of a private courtyard. It is also seriously damaged. No remains of the smooth face of the lock's walls are visible. Just one partial wall of Lock 10 can be found. The rest of it is gone. But the towpath is in very good condition. Judging by it, the remaining wall might be the west wall of the west chamber. Part of its side face is still exposed and lies above ground, but is covered by thick bushes. Pushing the bushes aside, you can see the limestone wall. Lock 9 is the easiest to reach in Cohoes. It is in George Street Park and is surrounded by lawns. This picture shows the head of the lock looking south. This is the lower end of the lock. This was the last lock that was explored, so more attention was paid in observing its details. The 175-year-old stonework has eroded at different rates. Some stonework has been grooved and eroded, while other stonework is as perfectly smooth as the day it was laid. However, generally, Lock 9 is in good condition. This is the west chamber. This is the east chamber. There is a round corner on the recess where the gate hinge was mounted. The other side is an obtuse angle. One edge of the ramp stones of the lower entrance is curved. It faces the canal. These are the rope cuts formed by heavy barges tugging at their lines along the ramp stones, torn out and removed. The other edge is still sharp. The stone slope protection in the canal bed near the lower entrance is still visible. Some few traces of former towpaths remain. Others remain intact and are still a good place for people to walk for fitness. Looking back at the locks that were exposed, you can understand that although the canal was eventually superseded by the railway, it has left us these valuable historical remains. A heady mixture of innovation and determination, and the industrious seeking and creation of wealth was cemented in the American character. In keeping these spirits, the United States can stay strong forever. A walk on the former towpath where mules once trod. It seems that you can still hear the clatter of mule hooves and the old Erie Canal song.
On the Erie Canal. She's a good old worker and a good old pal. 15 years on the Erie Canal. Well, we hauled some barges in our day.